Hi, everyone. Welcome to Accountable, where your business is our business. Hey, my name's Dave. Thank you so much for being here. You know, one of the things that that I struggle with, and one of the things that I think that a lot of you, I know when I talk to you, when I'm out, when I'm talking to you, when I'm teaching and when I'm speaking, and when I'm doing the consulting work that I do, one of the things that I struggle with a lot is where to stop. How do you know when you have enough? How do you know kind of when that you've kind of reached the point where you are kind of fulfilled, especially in your working life? I think that especially if you are an American business person, you know, we're kind of taught that growth is good. Growth is good. Economies of scale, build bigger, better, stronger, faster, you know, leaner, meaner, okay, all of those other things. And I think that for a lot of us, I think that you know that is that ambition is not necessarily a bad thing, but there needs to be some limitations to it. And so today I have a great guest. So on the podcast today, I have Dan Grech. Dan is the founder and CEO of BizHack Academy. He is a marketing specialist and a very in what he refers to as purpose-driven marketing, which is a great concept that I'm gonna look forward to talking with him about. Background in journalism, an instructor, a consultant, and an author that I have had the opportunity to collaborate with here on this new book for him and I. This is part of the Four Leaders series. I got a chance to write a chapter. Dan got a chance to write a chapter, and Dan was nice enough to give me the opportunity to read his chapter, and I think it's outstanding. And so I am very happy to have on the podcast Dan Grech. Dan, welcome to Accountable.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here.
So, Dan, this is again, this is kind of an odd concept to my American ears, to your American ears, to all of the business folks that are listening to this, all of the entrepreneurs that are out there. We're taught that growth is good. Growth is good. You should always go for kind of the next rung. That that is the American way. And you talk about in your chapter this idea of having enough. And I would love to hear more about that. What do you mean? What is this concept that you're talking about? Because again, I think for us, I think that have been working and building business in the United States, this is a rough one for us to get our heads around, as odd as it sounds.
Yeah. So I think a really helpful piece of context to kind of set up the conversation is I am a dual national. I am
Mhm.
my mother is from the United States. I was born and raised here. You know, by all appearances, I'm a gringo, but my father is from Spain, and I'm a citizen of Spain. Hablo español perfectamente, and I have a lot of family in Spain. And so every summer, pretty much for my entire life, I've gone to Spain to visit my family. And as you mentioned, you know, the first 20 years of my life, I was a journalist, and then more recently have become an entrepreneur and business owner, running a training academy in marketing. And so I'm a small business owner. And so I go to Spain, and it turns out that my first cousin is also a small business owner. She runs a gymnastics studio for young girls. And they're incredibly successful. It was started by her parents as like a side gig, a side hustle to make some extra money. And now, Gimnasio Grech, here's their logo.
There you go.
Gimnasio Grech, Grech is my last name, is now the number one dance rhythmic gymnastic studio in the Balearic Islands. They regularly crown the champions of the Balearic Islands, are a set of islands in the Mediterranean where my dad is from and where my family lives. They're in Palma de Mallorca. A lot of people have heard of Ibiza, the dance place. That's the Balearic Islands. So they're crowning the champions of the Balearic Islands. And they are in this kind of old basement It's a gymnastic studio with like 8-foot ceilings, so the girls can't like leap or anything. And they're completely oversubscribed with a wait list of more than 2 years. So
Wow.
I go to my cousin and I'm like, I'm in an entrepreneurs organization. The main textbook of EO is called Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. It's all about growth. I'm in a book about growth, asked to write a chapter about growth. And then I go and I talk to my cousin. I'm like, dude, open another sucursal, open another location, expand into the next building. Open, add space, create capacity. Grow this thing, man. Open it
Yeah.
up in Ibiza. Open this up in the mainland. Do this. You got this. Franchise it. And she looks at me and she's like, just like confusion on her face. And she says, Donnie, they all call me Donnie. Donnie, tenemos lo suficiente. Dan, we have enough.
Uh,
And she began to explain that like she and her husband, the classes, they have a staff of people been with them for 20 years, for 10 years. Their daughters take the classes. So if they're not in class, they're hanging around. They're all kind of like gym rats. Their daughters are the Balearic champions often. And they are so happy. And they
yeah.
have enough money to travel. And they live in a beautiful home that they own. And they have enough. Okay. So full stop. This thing hit me like a 2x4 to the head because I could not remember in my decade plus as an entrepreneur, a single entrepreneur saying to me in the United States, I have enough.
Because
And
that
so that was
because
like,
because that seems so that's odd. That's not what you're supposed to do, right? I mean, that we are taught, I think, that growth is good, right? You offered what sounds like to my American ears. I'm like, yeah, of course you want to scale up. Why would you not?
yeah, exactly. And it reminds me of that old Mexican, that old fable about a Mexican fisherman.
Yeah.
So a US entrepreneur, I'm going to tell it my own way. My dad would like take jokes and make them his own. So I'll do the same thing. So a US entrepreneur, following the scaling up methodology, sells 5 businesses, has hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank, and they retire to a small Mexican village to live out the rest of their days in peace and quiet, right? Because their whole dream all this time was to work really hard so they didn't have to work hard at all, and to live in a Mexican village and to fish and to spend time with their family. Okay. So the US entrepreneur goes to Mexico and they're living their dream life. $100 million in the bank, a huge mansion, time to do anything they want. And they run across this poor Mexican fisherman. And every morning he gets up at dawn and he goes out and he fishes and he gets as many fish as he can eat. Plus, he brings it back. He feeds his family. He sells a few at the market. He spends the afternoon sipping tequila and under the shade of a tree, and then he goes back the next morning and does it again. And they're deadly poor. They're deaf. They barely have enough money, to buy anything. They're subsisting on these fish. So the entrepreneur goes, dude, you are an incredible fisherman. Why don't you like go and hire some people to help you fish? Get a couple extra boats. You can borrow some money. And you can start scaling this, and you can actually. There's so many fish in the sea. You know exactly where they are. You know the secret spot nobody else knows, and there are more fish in the sea. So go like build this fleet of boats, do this, package it, sell it, and build this thing out. And then at the end of all of this, you'll be able to live in a small Mexican village, have everything you need, and you get to wake up every morning and fish. And he's like, dude, that's already what I'm doing. That's lo suficiente, right? Like, why do you have to like do all this noise to get to a place where that dude already is? We
Yeah.
would say he's poor, but he's rich.
Yeah.
So that's like just that question. I don't think we ask. Another example, another way to frame the same question is, okay, grow. We want to grow faster. To what end? Why? Why? Right? We don't ask that question. And so many people will say, um, well, I want to have a certain lifestyle. I want to live a certain lifestyle. I want to have a certain amount of money. Okay, great. The purpose in modern capitalism, in Milton Friedman capitalism, is increase shareholder value. Now, when you're the
Hmm.
owner of the company, there's one shareholder, you, right? So what Milton Friedman is saying to small businesses like mine is the purpose of my company is to make myself rich.
Right. Correct.
No, it is not. It is not. It
Yeah.
is not the purpose of my company to make myself rich. The purpose of my company is to do good in the world, to pursue work that I feel passionate and that makes me excited, to treat people right along the way, my customers, my employees, my partners, and to create abundance. This notion is called shareholder capitalism, stakeholder capitalism. Stakeholder capitalism in a business, the shareholder is one of them, and you need to balance their interests. Now, making money for me and my family is a necessary part of the mix in stakeholder capitalism because if I don't make enough money, I'm under stress and eventually the business goes down, right? And I won't be able to sustain the effort. So my impact will not be there. So, me making money is a necessary part of a blend of different outcomes that come with growth. And so people who are more attuned to like treating their people right might say, I need to grow to create opportunities for my employees or they'll get bored and leave. That's a super legit, right? Or, I need to grow because I'm doing something amazing in the world that no one else is doing and we need more of this, right? And those are all legitimate answers to the question, why grow? And then that's really where the question of lo suficiente starts becoming more interesting because if it's just about enrichment, as rich as possible. But we know that doesn't make you happy. In fact, I don't know about you, but I've met many entrepreneurs who retire or sell their business and are depressed and lost.
Yep.
And my opinion is the reason why is because they didn't ask the question to what end?
Right.
Like, why am I
Right.
doing this? So,
Yeah.
anyway, this has been really like top of mind for me for the last 10 years. And it all came into like a, bat to the head moment with my cousin. And I just feel like there's this part of a conversation that's like natural in Spain and other parts of Europe and absent in the United States. And I'll say first, this is a very privileged place to be,
Hmm.
right? Like we're privileged to be. We're not so many people. Like I lived in Argentina for 2 years. Spain when my dad left, it was a very poor country. These are rich people problems, right? Like to be able to
Yeah.
ask you like growth to what end and what is enough is only possible in the US and Europe and a few other places. But look, we won the birth lottery. Here we are. I think we have a responsibility to ask that question.
I think that that is such a unique perspective, and I think that especially when I was reading your chapter, I was blown away. I mean, I was blown away at just the concept and the thought, because again, it was so unique and so different. How much of having enough is really about being thankful for what you have? Is that really what we're driving at here? Because I get the sense from you that there's just a little bit more to it than that. I
Yeah.
don't think it's because I think that I don't think what you're saying is that I don't hear growth is bad. I don't hear that that everybody should just do nothing with their day and sit around and I don't know sit around and watch TV if I get the sense that about a little bit more than that. It's about a little bit more than just contentment. It's something deeper. Is that right, or am I off track?
It's funny. I call it something bigger.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the best way to answer this question is to talk about my journalism career.
Hmm.
So when I was a junior in high school, I took an elective course in journalism. It was a class. And the assignments for this class, the homework was to write articles for the newspaper called the Free Forum. I was at Harriton High School in Rosemont, Pennsylvania. And, you know, they would either assign you stories or you'd come up with your own. And I was like really hell bent on coming up with my own. And there was this thing that was happening in school, which was really weird. So I grew up in a very wealthy suburb of Philadelphia called the Main Line,
Mhm.
filled with doctors and lawyers. And I was the son of a clothing salesman and a middle school art teacher. So we were like, we used to call ourselves the poorest people on a rich block.
Yeah.
And so I um, you know, went into this class with a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, and I said, I'm gonna come up with something interesting. What is they said like, what matters most to you right now? Well, what was mattering to me is I was getting my money stolen while I was in gym class, and they did it in a ridiculous way. Whoever was stealing my money left the ones and took the 20s. So it was almost like the wet bandits from Home Alone. Like they had this like
Yeah.
signature, and it was in a locker in a locked locker room. So like, how were they getting in there? Because I knew, oh my god, my money's gone. Like I counted pennies. Like I used to have a running balance until I was in my mid 20s of what my bank account was. I could tell you off my memory because I would do the calculations as I spend money. So a dude who's like attending to money like that and who's like working lining soccer fields to make enough money to be able to like buy himself a hamburger at McDonald's notices when a $20 is missing from his wallet. I was like the worst guy to steal from for this bandit. Everybody else, like $20 was, like a rounding error to them coming from a wealthier family. Anyway, long story short, is I say to the journalism instructor, this is a long answer to a short question. Uh, Dude, uh, this is happening to me. And I asked a few of my friends, it's happening to them too. Can I do a school wide survey? I did a school wide survey. 40% of the school had had money stolen from them in this way. 25% of the freshmen who'd been in campus for more than 2 months had had money stolen from them. So there was like thousands of dollars being stolen from us. Um, and so I published this expose and I interviewed like the head of campus security, the head of the gym, the principal of the school. They had no idea this was happening. Anyway, long story short, as I published this, I remember that feeling of seeing everybody in class reading this. The headline was, read this article fast before it gets stolen. And
Wow.
1 week later, I'm preparing a follow up about the reaction of the administration, and I learned that the head of campus security had been let go.
Oh
And it turns
man.
out that it was an inside job. Anyway, I was addicted. I was like, boom, like, oh, it's game over. I was a journalist from that day, and ever since, even I'd say to this day, even though I haven't worked as a daily journalist in 10 years. And when you do mission driven work for your whole career, I was at NPR, I was at PBS, I was
Mhm.
a correspondent for the Miami Herald, Washington Post, Boston Globe, part of a Pulitzer Prize. I had this incredible career until I didn't.
Right.
You just become imprinted. It's imprinted on your soul to do work that's meaningful, that's purpose driven, that's about something bigger than self enrichment. That's why I so frustrated with the shareholder capitalism approach, because it never running this business never felt like something I was doing to enrich myself. In fact, I've never worked harder and made less,
Yeah.
but I do it anyway. And I do it with love and joy and passion and drive and resilience. And the reason why is because I'm impacting people with my work.
Yeah.
And I'm addicted to and that's called in Maslow's hierarchy, self actualization. And there's another concept called ikigai, which is this kind of professional sweet spot. And it's a Japanese concept, and it's a combination of four things. What do you love doing? It's like a Venn diagram, right? What do you love doing? What are you the best in the world at? What can you make money doing? And what does the world need?
Mhm.
What does the world need is purpose, right? This is what impact is. And it's an essential part of it, right? What do you love at? What are you good at? What do you make money at? And what does the world need? What problem are you solving? And that's how I think we should all approach I mean, look, I don't want to be super prescriptive. Everybody comes from different sort of. That's how I approach my career
Yeah,
is in search of that sweet spot. And it's not a destination, it's a process because I change, my needs change, um, you know, what I'm best at, what the market needs is constantly changing.
sure.
So but it is always it's more like a thing I'm aiming for. And I will say this, I've been up to this, I've run this business for 7 years. It's really only in the last 6 months to year after I wrote that essay that I've really found that sweet spot where I'm like, it was like a locking in. It was like you're sitting there listening to the tumblers in a safe deposit box and you hear it click and
Yeah.
you open the safe. I had that unlocking moment in the last 12 months in terms of what my ikigai is. And now that I know what my professional sweet spot is, I'm like on fire, man. And it's interesting, like, whereas before I had a lot of trouble staying focused, now I don't.
I think that I appreciate it, especially in your chapter. I think one of the things that I really enjoyed hearing about was I think you're very candid about your struggles to to find this spot of having enough. I mean, I think that you're very clear in that this is not something that you just kind of started off with, and and then it just was there. Like you said, I think it's a process, and I think you were very honest about that. Is it possible for someone, because I know that we talked about how the United States, richest country in the world, we're in a place of privilege. I mean, this is rich people problems, okay? But there are a lot of people that are struggling, and I think especially when you start a business and you are kind of scraping to get by, you're scraping to get clients, and you're scraping to get uh, recognition, and you're scraping to get your name out there, and you're scraping to make sure that your family has enough food to eat, and so and so has my kid has a health issue that I need to take care of, and that's going to cost a lot of money, and there's a lot of strains and a lot of pressure on you. Is it possible to get to a place where you have enough? Because you talked about that, you talked about your family in Spain, and some of the folks that they weren't necessarily wealthy, but they had enough. Is it possible to do that when you're kind of just a young entrepreneur trying to just make it?
I think it's a wonderful question. And like, I'm not a self-help guru, so I'm like
Yeah,
reluctant to I'm reluctant to talk about anyone but myself, but there might be something
sure.
instructive in my journey to people. The finding is in the doing. Like, for me, you can't theorize your way to ikigai. You just got to do the work. In other words, your number one job when you're starting out a business is generating enough revenue to pay yourself.
Right.
Because if you can't pay yourself, this is a hobby, first of all, right? Getting money, thing, part of ikigai is what the world needs and what people will pay you to do. That's a product market fit, right?
Mhm.
Which is a core concept in all business. Focus there, start there, find the product market fit, generate enough revenue to pay your employees more than fairly and yourself market rate. Like, you're not serving anybody if you're paying yourself a pittance. Like, separate from your owner benefit, like a salary. Now, a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to pay a salary because I want to avoid taxes. And I think, well, what a ridiculous thing you're doing. You're like starting a business for tax avoidance. Like, no, you're starting a business ideally to like make a whole lot of money on the end of it, like take a lot of risk up front, make a whole lot of money at the end, and hopefully enjoy it along the way and do some good along the way. So anyway, pay yourself a decent salary and really stick to that, and force yourself to run a business that can actually pay you a decent salary. Because by the way, most of us don't want to be in this seat wearing all these hats forever. And so we're going to need to hire someone to replace us. And that person's going to need a salary can measure it with market rates. You might as well pay yourself that market rate to get the discipline of being able to run a business that does it. And oh, by the way, if you can't run a business that can pay you a market rate salary, are you really running a viable business?
Yeah.
Right. And this is specific to small business, not like a venture backed. enterprise where you investing a lot of other people's money for growth that's much faster but not necessarily profitable. Like, I'm not talking about that scenario. I'm talking about your typical small business, you know, run by an entrepreneur. Um, so so yeah, like I really think that you got to start by making money to sustain yourself and to prove that you have product market fit. That's two of the four quadrants. But the next thing is what's missing in the United States. Well, really, it's the do you love it,
Yeah.
right? Like the what are you best at is as you get more mature in the business, you start to get to ask the question. Like when you have enough revenue, usually it starts at around 500, 750K. But particularly around the $1 million mark. When you hit the $1 million mark, you get to ask your question, what am I the best in the world at? And then you start to just delegate everything else.
Yeah.
Up until the million mark, you're the chief bottle washer and the CEO. You're doing everything. You're wearing multiple hats. But you get to be more like, and I'm literally feeling this as my company has gone through, like it really does start to happen 800, 900, $1 million mark. You actually be able to hire like really powerful professional executives who can like usually on a fractional basis like take over running parts of the business like marketing or finance or HR or operations, right? You can start hiring people to do that, which is you were wearing all those hats before, and you get to like step away from that and then be, with most business owners, it's you're the like visionary leader, setting kind of the long-term vision and helping build the strategy, and you're the biz dev person, you're the salesperson, you're the
Mhm.
the closer, and those are like the two seats that, like at least for me, I'm going to be in probably as long as I'm involved in the company. But everything else, I would rather not be that involved in and have hire better people than me to do. That's what you're best in the world at, right? But the what do you love? That's the hard one.
Yeah.
That's the one that you can't just think your way to, in my experience. Like you got to do the work and find the love in it.
So it's I think what I hear you saying is that it's about kind of it's not you got to get to the point where you can sustain yourself and kind of to get to this point where you can start thinking about what is it that is my purpose, how am I going to do good in the world, and how am I going to find something that I love that is going to get me out of bed every day and really kind of fire me up to kind of continue moving forward when at that point, I have what I need, so it needs to be something kinda more than that. Am I encapsulating that, well?
Yeah, I think it's easiest to describe in the negative.
Okay.
Um, Almost all of us started our business for freedom,
Yeah.
even and control. It's more important than money. We either didn't want or couldn't work with a boss,
Yep.
and we want to control our schedule.
Yeah.
And if we're honest with ourselves, that is worth way more to us than money. And yet, I meet many entrepreneurs, and I bet you do too, who are trapped in their business,
Yeah.
especially when you're dealing, David, with the financial side.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
most of us are going to get trapped in our business. So the thing that we started, we're going to be our own worst boss ever.
Yep.
Pay ourselves less for more work that takes us away from our family, that makes us hyper stressed and anxious. And the only way that makes a dang bit of sense is if you're doing work you love and
Yeah.
it's making the world a better place. Like in my opinion, like why else do this? Otherwise, you're not only are you trapped, but you hate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I have hated my business. I'll give you a very concrete example. I was on vacation, right? So I run a training academy, right?
Yep.
So I sell courses, and I was going to say stupidly, but like I have intentionally, but not business savvy wise, chosen to focus on micro enterprises, smaller businesses, right? Bad idea. Why? They don't have time or money.
Right.
Yet somehow, through sheer force of will and persuasive power, I've been able to sell 1,000 small businesses who have neither time nor money my courses. And over the course of 6 years, have been able to make okay living at it. I began to hate that work. I was tired of selling really good courses to people who didn't have the time or money to take them.
Mhm.
And I would convince them to do it, and it would change their lives, and they would thank me profusely. But the sales process sucked so much
Yeah.
that I didn't want to do it anymore. So I had a choice: close shop or find a different model. But I love teaching these businesses. So I said, what if, and I looked at my business and said, oh, about 40% of my revenue is coming from organizations that sponsor scholarships for these courses. And those have just been accidental. Like I haven't sought any of that out. It came to me. A lot of it was COVID money.
Mhm.
And I said, could I grow this? Could this model, the B2B model, where I'm working with business support organizations, getting them to sponsor businesses, be a model? That was when I hit my ikigai. That was that. And by the way, the pain that I described. So I was on vacation in Port St. Lucie, this beautiful coastal town in Florida, and I was cold calling while my whole family was, and my friends that we were there with were eating brunch together. I was cold calling people who had no interest in hearing from me to try to get them to take the class that was starting on Monday. And I was so miserable. I was so unhappy. And that was 3 years ago. And I had to live in that business. I was trapped in that business for quite a while longer because I hadn't yet figured out, I hadn't had that click moment. But that was the seed of doubt and discontentment that led me to find that sweet spot, which is working with business support organizations to get them to sponsor people to take the classes so that they can take the class for less money. So anyway, that's my journey, right? Is it took me 3 years to get to the point of burnout, and then another 2.5 years to figure out the business model that I wanted to run with. Now I tried out a couple other things along the way. It wasn't like I was static, but I didn't find the right model. I mean, we're going in depth, so I'll tell you, I started a whole consultancy after that. It's called Fractional CMO Services, and I still sell this service, but um, Fractional CMO Services is a part-time outsourced head of marketing. So we started to place part-time outsourced heads of marketing. One thing that makes this business great is it's recurring revenue. So I
Yeah.
went from this like transactional business. Part of what I hated was this feeling that I had to just, I would sell 150 seats and then I would start January 1st and I have to sell 150 more to just break even from last year, 200 if I wanted to grow. And each year that mountain got higher and that felt terrible. That was a horrible feeling. And then so I said, okay, recurring revenue, that's what I really want. So I started this consulting business. And then I realized, like, to my chagrin, after building a $300,000 a year recurring revenue base, is that I didn't enjoy the work.
Mm.
So I dismantled it. Like, it wasn't a happy thing, but, and I built this very successful run up to a very successful consultancy, but it just wasn't a fit for me. So even though it's been called, biz hack, it's really been 3 or 4 different businesses. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs would have just stuck with the consultancy because it was definitely a profitable recurring revenue business. But I could just feel like I was angry at my clients and I didn't enjoy doing the work. And again, like the one thing we can control is like I'm the boss. Like I get to say no. Like yes, I spent 2 years of my life building this thing. I learned a lot about how to build a new line of revenue, a new business model, and so now I'm applying those lessons I learned to this other model, which is that business support organization model. And I know I've found it. And I keep getting like validation, like from the universe. I was at a conference and someone said, "Dan, there are blue skies here. Don't stop. Keep going."
Yeah.
And I literally write that, it's like right here, and I look at it when I'm crying myself to sleep, because I haven't closed a major sale in 6 months.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
believe in this, man, and I know it's going to be really rough for the rest of this year, but I know 2025 and beyond, I just believe that this is going to, really believe, not just like gut, but evidence that this is going to happen. It's just a longer sales process, and I need to learn how to sell a new approach to the product.
So is that what you do with when you work with another company? I mean, you're trying to help them kind of find their purpose and kind of what their I believe when I looked on your website, you try to help them find their story.
Yeah,
Is that right? Tell me a little bit more about that. What does that look like?
absolutely. So, my business story is that my grandfather on my mother's side was a physics teacher at Central High School in Philadelphia, the second oldest public high school in the country. And on my mother's side of the family, my mother, my aunt, my uncle, my sister, all of them were school teachers. On my dad's side, my grandfather, Satur Grech, was a coach in La Liga, which is the Spanish soccer league. He was a
Yep.
player and then a coach. My father was a professional soccer coach. My cousin, as I told you, is a gymnastics coach. My sister, before she became a school teacher, was a professional soccer player and coach. It's all coaches on that side of the business, sports and coaching. And BizHack, and I didn't realize this until years after I started it, is actually really honoring my grandfathers, the coaching and the teaching. I'm a third generation trainer.
Yeah.
And that's my business story. That's why I do this. And I didn't even understand it until I was in my 40s. But that's why I've always been a teacher. I always used to, even when I was a journalist, I taught on the side and I didn't understand why. And now I do because I thought through it. So what I do is I help business owners discover why they do what they do through interviewing techniques that I learned as an investigative journalist. And so like one of my core products and the basis of all of our training is a discovery of your business story, the why you do what you do, what we call the story of me. Now, people are like, well, look, it's not about you, it's about them, it's about the customer. You're the mentor, they're the hero of this journey, right? To borrow a story brand and Donald Miller. And I say, yeah, that's absolutely true. But people only do business with people they like and trust.
Right.
And the best and fastest way to build likability and trustworthiness is a compelling personal narrative, right? Like you change the way you feel about someone when you hear that he's a third generation trainer, that he is like, I'm not gonna violate, like my granddads are watching me up
Mhm.
there.
Yep.
And I'm not gonna fuck with that. I remember when my granddad Satur in Spain got mad at me when I wasn't doing you know, when I wasn't training effectively when he was teaching me soccer. I was like, I don't want to, the spiritual wrath of my past grandfathers. I do not want that raining down on me. So I'm gonna honor that in what I do. I'm gonna take care of you, David, as my client, David as my employee, David as my partner. I'm gonna do this. I'm doing it for the right reasons, and so it builds this like likability and trustability, which is the essence of customer acquisition, but it's also the essence of leadership. It's the essence of business building. I call it hack, the root hack in business, biz hack, root hack of business. It's business story, and the other thing is this: most of us run a Me Too business.
Mhm.
A Me Too business. I run a Me Too business. There are plenty of training academies who are way better, way bigger, way better at marketing, way bigger than me. Have a lot more money behind them, um, but none of them have me. None of them have my story. So it's my unique differentiator. It's probably my only unique differentiator. And then you like scrape and search and you try to create a little bit of intellectual property or a customized process. But in the end, the one thing we all have is our story, and nobody can match that. And this sounds like maybe a little ephemeral storytelling. This is 100% truth. Think about your favorite local bookstore, coffee shop, restaurant, and picture the owner of that, and ask yourself, about them and their story. And almost everyone I say this to has a specific person in mind. I'm thinking right now of Mitchell Kaplan of Books and Books, our local independent bookstore. They've been around for 30 plus years, 40 plus years. And 20 years ago, Barnes and Noble opened up one block away. The intention was to kill Books and Books. Books and Books is uh, thriving, has 6 or 7 locations, and Barnes and Noble's on life support, and Borders is gone. So how come? Because of Mitchell.
Yeah.
Like, they don't discount their books.
Yeah.
So you can go and get a bestseller for 40% off a block and a half away, and people come to Books and Books and buy it at full price to support Mitchell,
Because there's a connection there, there's a relationship there.
because he is a part of this community, and he's a mensch, and we love him, and we want to support him. And the 40% off isn't worth it to me.
Yeah.
So that's the business. That's the power of this story. It is an unbeat, and he is one of the top independent booksellers in the country, and it's on the power of this story. So, and I spoke to him. I was at an event this week, and I asked him about this. I said, "Do you think your story helped you survive?" He said, "We wouldn't be here without it." But I'm gonna like go one further. Think about Google.
Yeah.
Think about Amazon. Their founding stories. Like with intimate detail, who their founder is and how this company was started. Tesla. We all know about Elon Musk sleeping on the floor when they were in that 2017, production crunch. Like, we know about his mission, right, for sustainability, and how the car was a sort of path to doing that. We all know that story. We know about Sergey Brin, and Larry Page as a lot graduate students at Stanford. We all know about Steve Jobs getting fired and coming back. We all know about Amazon starting with books, and in this little corner office. Like, we all know about Mark Zuckerberg starting Face Smash in college and then dropping out of Harvard. Like, we could literally recite the founder stories, the stories of me, of the big 5 companies. Why? Because they taught us those stories. They have entire PR teams that cultivated those mythologies. So all we're doing is borrowing stuff you already know, the best practices that already exist, and leveraging them at the small business level. And the final point is, not only will it attract the best people in the world to you, but it will help sustain you during those inevitable hard moments. Because I
The
don't want to let
story.
my granddad, yeah, I don't want to let my granddads down.
Yeah, because the story kind of keeps you going. I mean, the story is kind of what compels you to kind of keep going and keep going further.
And you're doing it anyway. Like, you don't, just a lot of people aren't like intentional and conscious about it.
Yeah.
Like, you are doing this despite, like, 96% of businesses never make it past $1 million.
Yep.
you know the vast majority will fail within 5 years. So what are we doing? Like, we could make so much more money working for someone else. It would be more peace of mind. I've never done anything more stressful or anxiety ridden than running my own business. The pain, the weight of cash flow is so heavy. And the need to, like, you have entire families relying on your payroll, hitting payroll, right? Like, that's a heavy burden, heaviest burden I've ever borne. So, like, why are you wearing this, like, heavy sheet? Like, you could just go get a 9 to 5, make a good salary, probably better than what you're making now, have more time for your family, not have to think about this all the time, not wake up in the middle of the night with to-do lists running through your head. And that makes a lot of sense for most people, but it doesn't make sense for us. We're driven entrepreneurs, but it's really good to understand what you're driven to do, right?
Yeah.
Because it just kind of, it like centers it all. Otherwise, it just feels just like you're trying to enrich yourself, and that seems so far away. And you're trapped in the business right now that you hate. Like, what the hell is this all about? In other words, another way to put it is, if I hadn't figured out that I was doing this on behalf of and in honor of and to continue the legacy of my grandfather, I think I would have probably quit this business long ago.
Yeah.
Because
So,
what's the point?
there's a lot of business owners. I would agree with you that I think probably are feeling trapped. They're an entrepreneur that kind of started off down the road and thought that it was going to be kind of like the movies where it would go through like a montage and all of a sudden life would be perfect. And it's just not, and they're feeling kind of trapped right now. What would you say to them? What would be your advice to those folks that are feeling kind of trapped within their own business?
Yeah, I think really just allow, like, be still and allow space and understand what the trap is, and like open your mind to the possibility of exiting the business. Like, just allow for all answers and possibilities. Like, it's entirely possible that this is just not the right fit. Um, it's also entirely possible that you're doing something you love and this is just a temporary setback. But I,
Yeah.
I just feel like persevering for the sake of persevering and powering through. Like, if you're a driven uh entre if you're a driven entrepreneur, um, you're gonna just do it regardless. And as such, um, you're gonna power through and you're going to get on the other side of this. And you might actually have a worse situation than where you started. You might be trapped in a more profound way than you were before, you know?
Yeah.
Which is, you might find yourself running a business you hate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. So it takes a little bit of bravery, I think, to just ask the hardest question of all, which is this, do I believe in the work? Right. And am I doing this? Like, why am I doing this? Right. Like, why is this problem that I'm trying to solve, this unmet need that I'm trying to meet, in the world, in my customers, like, why do I have to be the one who does that? Because I'm probably running a Me Too business and there's someone else who could just do it instead. So why does it have to be me? Right. And just really ask yourself, why am I doing this? And identifying, oh, well, I'm honoring my grandparents or whatever the story is. Or, for many people, it's about trauma. It's like, I was, treated badly as a child in this way or that, and I don't want anyone to ever have to experience that again. Right. Or, a lot of entrepreneurs say, like, I saw my parents, who were my dad, my dad was an entrepreneur and he was a failed entrepreneur. And I saw, like, the havoc it wreaked on our family. And so I'm really committed, to being a entrepreneur who runs a successful business. And so I am really, you know, I hear a version of that story a lot. Probably the most dramatic example, a woman who runs a daycare center in a poor neighborhood um, in Miami. Um, the reason that she started the daycare center is because her own son was in a daycare center that didn't have proper safety precautions, and he was permanently disabled.
Mm.
And she's like, I don't want any mother ever to have to go through what I went through. I have my own, version of that. After I left, after I stopped being a journalist, I decided I wanted to learn marketing. And so I said, okay, yeah, this should be easy. I'll just go take a quick boot camp in marketing. And back in 2013, no such thing existed. And so then I had to, like, learn it the hard way. And it was really hard. It was really difficult to learn marketing. And I said, I don't want anyone to have to go through this pain. I can summarize 10 years of learning in 10 weeks and save you a ton of time. So I did found BizHack from a sort of a trauma of, like, how difficult it was to learn this mid-career. And then later, that was, like, really why I started Marketplace. I'm like, this is ridiculously difficult to learn. And everything that's out there is, like, either too theoretical, like marketing professor type stuff, or just really educational marketing for a software solution or an agency. It was all, like, bombarded by the marketing bros selling you their, simple three-step solution. If you just click this button and pay for their
Yeah.
software, the Russell Brunsons of the world. Actually, I think Russell's a really smart guy, but, that kind of ilk and genre.
Yeah.
The Gary Vaynerchuk's, the um, Ryan Dyson, and digital marketer. They're great guys, but they're just, like, selling you a software or selling you
Yeah.
an agency. Gary Vaynerchuk, most of his money comes from the agency services he does. So so I just like, I don't trust what they have to tell me because I know they're really just upselling me. So so I said, like, is there just some teacher out there that, like, isn't trying to upsell me or sell me for their software? Which, by the way, also business worst practice. Like, best practice is, like, get them into a recurring revenue business software, right? That's what you should be doing. And I didn't want to do that way, which all my advisors were telling me to do, and it just wasn't a fit because ultimately I'm a teacher and a coach, and a teacher and a coach, is more about serving the student. Um, and being a transformational figure for the student. And there's some really great software that's already out there that I can just refer them to, rather than trying to build my own. So it just wasn't a fit for me, and it's made the path much harder. But it's always fit. Like I'm always looking for that fit, and that's sort of why I've stuck with it. I think it's actually the kind of business I do, which is selling marketing training, is very easy to start. But I can't think of anybody, at least where I live here in Miami, that actually has sustained it for 7 years
Yeah,
or does it for anything more than like a side hustle,
right.
because it's a hard business to run the way I'm running it. But I stick with it, and I really starting to feel like in the next couple of years I'm going to have a really scalable, unique, highly valuable offering that will kind of check all my boxes.
I think that the power that you were talking about of finding your own story and kind of why you're doing what you're doing is just a really powerful message. If you would like to check out our book, I wrote a chapter, Dan wrote a chapter. Dan's chapter is phenomenal. It's the second book in the Four Leaders series. The name of the book is Strategic Growth for Leaders: 10 Success Keys to Elevate You to the Next Level. And definitely, I highly recommend Dan's chapter, especially too if you're feeling kind of stuck and you're kind of wondering why you're doing what you're doing. It's a great chapter to read. So, Dan, if folks would like to get a hold of you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Yeah. So to get a hold of me personally, I think the easiest way is to just email me at dgrech@bizhack.com, dgrech at bizhack.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn and Instagram at under Dan Grech on LinkedIn and Dan Grech1 on Instagram. To find BizHack, uh, my business, if you're interested in marketing training and specifically AI powered marketing training, go to bizhack.com and look up BizHack Academy on our social media channels.
Hey, BizHack Academy, I think, really does fill a need, especially in today's world. I mean, there's a lot of folks that are just trying to kind of sell you on three-step programs. I think what you've heard today is that that's not Dan. Dan is really trying to help you find kind of what your story is and kind of what your purpose is in the marketplace. And I think that's what's going to keep you going pretty much every day. So, anyway, I just I think that this is a great conversation. It's a compelling conversation. Dan, I just want to say thank you so much for being on Accountable.
Thank you so much for the opportunity and for the really thoughtful questions. And I invite all of you guys to take a minute, go somewhere quiet. For me, I took a day-long silent retreat in the Berkshire Mountains, and I just said, "Where is my joy? What do I love to do?" And I think it's our responsibility to lean into that. We're so blessed to live in a country of plenty, where most of our needs are met. And I know it can be a stressful place, and there's not a great safety net, but for most of us, we'll be okay. And so lean into your joy, because why else do it?
I can't think of a better way to end this podcast, folks. Lean into your joy. So thank you so much, Dan, and we will see you all next time on Accountable.